Okay, well, I want to welcome everyone to tonight's webinar. This is something really new and really cool. What I'm going to be talking about tonight is how to turn hidden stuff and unwanted junk into pure profit. And no, I'm not going to be talking about the public domain, although it probably could fit in there somewhere. This is something completely different, something that I've actually been involved in off and on for quite some time, like 20, 30 years. And not only that, my partner in crime, Tommy, who had a family emergency and can't be here tonight, he's been at this for a while as well and has had some huge success in it. And so we thought that, you know what, it would be really cool to just share this information with all of you, because we're all looking for extra money to supplement our income, or something that we can do. And I know at times it can get pretty darn frustrating to figure out, how do I create that product, or what does it take to set up a website, or all of those kinds of things. Well, what I'm going to be sharing with you tonight has nothing to do with product creation, has nothing to do with setting up websites or WordPress or any of that. You don't even need a website, okay? You don't even need to create a product. You don't even need Photoshop or anything like that, which I know coming out of my mouth is like a shock to the system because I'm a Photoshop junkie, but you don't need any of that, okay? So what we are going to talk about, however, tonight is I'm going to be sharing the core business model for this buying and selling goods thing that I'm going to be talking about tonight, okay? I'm also going to share what to buy low and sell high. You've probably heard that phrase. Some people refer to it as arbitrage, and I don't like that word. I think it's a cool word to say, but beyond that, it's just confusing. And so I'm going to actually define what that means and what we mean by that phrase and what you should focus on. I actually have some really cool examples that are like current examples that I think you're going to really get a kick out of. I'm also going to be sharing where some of the best places are to find goods to sell, because if you haven't figured it out yet, we're going to be buying and selling goods, which is pretty much the same thing I do anyways with digital products, but in this case, it's physical products. We're going to talk about where to sell your goods for an easy profit, which this is something that you're definitely going to want to know. I'm going to share some current examples, as I mentioned before, on what's available and what it's selling for. Show you some cool little research techniques on that. And of course, the proverbial and ever popular much, much more. Okay, so let's get into it. First thing I want to do is share with you the core model. And this is kind of like the underpinning structure of what everything that we're going to be talking about tonight kind of rests on, okay? So it's actually not complicated, so you don't need to worry. The first thing we want to do here is to locate hidden and unwanted goods at a low cost. All right, and believe it or not, they are everywhere. I'm going to show you just one example tonight, but they are literally everywhere. Doesn't matter where you live, quite honestly. Truth is, though, you can find them online on CRAIGSLIST. You can find them at storage and pod auctions, public sales, thrift stores, yard sales. All of these places just give you access to amazing goods that you can buy and sell. A lot of people just aren't willing to do that, or they have no idea how to do it, and that's what I'm going to be showing you tonight. So the object of the game here is to buy your goods, whatever they are, and we're going to talk about what they might need to be here in a little bit, but to buy as cheaply as possible. And lots are better, meaning to buy in quantity, hence storage and pod auctions. And so next, we want to sell what we buy, okay? So we're going to sell through available online sales channels like CRAIGSLIST, which is awesome for larger items in many cases, through eBay, which is great for smaller items and electronics, through Etsy, you might not have thought of that, but Etsy is awesome for vintage items, and Amazon. Amazon has a great new program called Fulfilled by Amazon, or also known as FBA. And it's a great program for selling your newer items, and then Amazon just handles all the details. So a little research will show you what your best options are as far as which channels you need to sell to, and what you should price it at. And I'm going to kind of take you through some of that process tonight as we go through here. Okay? All right, so one of the biggest benefits from this model is quick cash turnaround. And, I was just recently reminded about, I've been in the internet marketing space for 5 or 6 years now. And I remember how it was when I first got started. It was extremely intimidating. And now I pretty much have my business down to a science. I mean, I do what I do, and it works well for me, and I adapt as needed. But there's still this element of time of creating a product, bringing it to market, putting everything in place, starting to ramp up the sales process, and then have that ongoing. And as a result, that process can take quite a bit of time, as you would imagine, depending on how long it takes you to create the product and all of that. As you know, some of the courses that I teach, it may take 2.5 months to teach those, if they're like 8-10 weeks, something like that. And so you're talking about a finished product at the end of 2 months, and then you start selling that product. So the time space in the online world can be pretty substantial sometimes. Not so much the case with what I'm going to be talking about tonight, because you can actually turn things around very quickly, which is one of the reasons why I love it. I mean, whenever I first got into this, I was still married at the time, and gosh, I remember us going out and finding stuff on a Friday and Saturday, and Sunday we had turned around and sold it with cash in hand. I mean, we were going out with like $10 because that's all we had, and finding stuff at yard sales and thrift shops and places like that, and then turning around and selling it for hundreds of dollars a week. I mean, literally, it just supplemented our income in a way that we needed it to, because we were desperate. Things weren't that good, and so that's one of the reasons why I've always loved this approach to business. It's a great business model. And so, as I mentioned before, unlike other business models, there's no website needed, there's no expensive software to learn, and there's no hoping and praying that someone buys your ebook in 6 months whenever you're done writing it. So you don't have to worry about all of those things. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of bring this to all of you, because I know that some of you are struggling within this. I mean, listen, I teach a lot about product creation, and I love that process. I believe in it completely. And if it's something that connects with you, I strongly encourage you to do it, because you can really profit well from it. Okay? But by the same token, I'm also smart enough to realize that different things for different people. Some of you like photography, some of you don't. I happen to love photography, but there's different ways that you can earn money, and not just from a supplemental perspective, but from a full-time income perspective. And that certainly is the case with this model as well. And so there's a couple things to look for whenever you begin on this journey for finding this treasure that we're talking about. And the important point I want to get across to you is that you want to know what to look for. In other words, don't guess. And so one of the mistakes that I made early on, whenever I was started getting involved in this buying and selling of goods, was that I would see something that I thought looked like it should be worth a lot of money, or, oh, this is a collectible item, so this should definitely be, something that I want to invest in. Come to find out that it's worthless. I mean, imagine, I'll give you a really good example. Beanie Babies have kind of had their day, so a lot of the value and all of that is really dropped when it comes to Beanie Babies. But back in the day, whenever Beanie Babies were all the craze, I was making some pretty decent money from it. I mean, how cool is it to find, to buy a couple dinosaur Beanie Babies at the store for $4 or $5 a piece and turn around and sell them for $700? But I did stuff like that, pretty consistently. And it's a pretty awesome payday. Quite frankly, I thought the person was freaking insane for spending that much money on stuffed dinosaurs, but who am I to judge? Their money spent the same way anyway, so I didn't really care, and they wanted it, and I wanted to sell it, so it was a win-win for both of us. But now, that same Beanie Baby, gosh, I have no idea what it's worth. Same with stuff like Longaberger baskets and all of that. Some of those kind of things I find hilarious because people have to have them, and they spend all this money for the name brand and everything, and the next thing you know, they're everywhere at yard sales being sold for a fraction of their cost. That's not the kind of stuff that you want to look for, okay? Because you're going to lose your shirt. It just doesn't sell at all. Now, what you buy can depend on the sales channel that you want to use. In other words, if you decide that maybe you want to use Etsy as a sales channel, of course, you can sell vintage goods on Etsy, and so that might determine what you look for. You know, maybe you love vintage jewelry or vintage clothing or something like that, which, by the way, vintage clothes can sell really well. And so that may skew or focus you in a certain type of thing that you want to purchase over something else, for example. Now, electronics, they tend to be huge. You know, even some vintage stuff can be really huge. And I'm going to show you some examples here in a little bit. Kitchen appliances can do really well, depending on what they are. The same with, as I was mentioning earlier, vintage stuff can do extremely well, except you want to beware of collectibles. Now, there's some collectibles that are really worthwhile giving some focus to, like memorabilia. But, again, you want to educate yourself. There's a little bit of research involved in this, just like anything else. You know, and I want to say up front here that whether this is something that you find interesting or want to get into or whatever, you really want to approach it like a business. You know, so many people I talk to says, oh yeah, I think I'm going to try that. You know, and kind of like what Yoda used to say, there is no try, only do. You know, and so don't approach it like, oh, that sounds like fun, I think I'm going to try it. Yeah, don't do that. Okay, don't try it. Just make a decision, a quality decision that, you know what, I'm going to make this work because I need to make it work. You know, that's how I approach my entire business. Even though, you know, I've experienced some success and I have some awesome products and great customers and all that kind of stuff, I approach my business from the perspective of I have to make this work in the most ethical, quality way that I can. And I find that as I do that and continue to build those relationships, then my business continues to increase, you know. So I'm not trying to make a living online. I'm doing it, you know, because I have to. And because, you know, I have bills to pay just like you do. So you really want to keep that in mind.